Marvel Rivals Season 1 just dropped a few days ago, and so what better time to make an all-around, all-encompassing strategist guide than right now. I'm sure the introduction of the Invisible Woman is going to entice many new players to join and pick up the role of strategist for reasons. So I figured because of that, we'll go over all 8 strategists. I'll give why, when I would pick them, go over their abilities, and some tips, tricks, whatever you want to call it, for all 8 of them. Also, this video should be timestamped for you, so you can go ahead and jump to any of the heroes you want to throughout the video. I know this is a long video. I don't expect anybody to watch the entire thing through all the way. I tried to add a bit more input besides just reading the abilities to you, so let me know in the comments down below if that actually had some benefit to you. Also, while you're down there, go ahead and like and subscribe if you would like to. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. But if you enjoy the strategist role, you enjoy healing, you have the mental fortitude to handle a 5 and 18 Psylocke saying GG no heals when you have 30k plus healing, this video will be for you. And I think it's only fitting that we start off with the newest strategist, the Invisible Woman. Let's go ahead and get into her first ability we're going to talk about, which is her left click. So as you can see, I'm healing this spot, I'm damaging the other one, and you might be able to hear that it's hitting twice. That's because her left click acts as a boomerang. As you can see, I throw it out and it comes back. It pierces through allies and enemies alike. So really, you want to be positioning as best you can to hit as many allies, enemies with this ability as possible to get maximum use out of it. Next, we'll go ahead and talk about her passive. So we're going to take some damage here, and then we're going to exit combat for a few seconds, and then we will go invisible like that. And then as you can see, we're getting a heal over time. All right, now for her right click, we can put up a shield that goes in front of the target and has a healing radius around it that provides a heal over time. The shield has 300 health, and then once it breaks, it goes on a 6-second cooldown, as you can see down there in the bottom right, and then you have to wait before you can reapply the shield. Now, when you put this shield up, you can also push F to recall it. So if your shield's about to break and your teammates are full, you can recall it, and you see in the left over there, it's going to start recharging as well. So for this ability, I like to try and kind of spam it. You can kind of drop it in the middle of your team if they're on a point in the domination game mode, but I do find that the 300 health, it does kind of get blown up pretty quickly. And right now, since she is still pretty new, a lot of people don't know to really like play around the wall, so you'll drop it on a teammate and then they will just go running right out from it. Then you just have to keep kind of like applying it to them. You can apply it to teammates that are in the air as well. So this is good if you have an Iron Man flying around and you're having a hard time like tracking and hitting him because he's spazzing out. You can go ahead and just kind of like spam right click to heal him up with the shield. Also, if enemies pass through the shield, they're slowed. I don't find that happens too often because you can't free place the shield, so you're not really going to be blocking off a doorway or a choke point with this unless you get one of your teammates to position themselves there on purpose to set it. Overall, I don't think this ability is as strong as I thought it was going to be whenever it was previewed, but kind of time will tell its use cases on how good it's going to be. Next up, we have left shift. So what we're going to go do is we're going to throw out a projectile ball. It will detonate once it interacts with something and create this sphere. Now that sphere will pull enemies in and deal damage to them, as you can see here. You can also push left shift again to activate this ability, so you can use it on flyers and things like that. That's a good amount of damage, really good. It's got a really big radius, so it's good for throwing on points. It doesn't have any like healing capability, so it's just strictly an offensive ability. Next up, we have her E. So as you can see, we can either push left click for outward, right click for inward. It's basically exactly what it sounds. You can either push them out or you can pull them in. Mainly for this ability, a lot of the time you want to be kind of using it to try and pick off maybe say a healer that's overextending or a tank that's really low trying to get back to their healer. Go ahead and pull them in closer to your team. If you are getting dived in the backline by like a Thor or something like that, obviously you can do this and then try and create space and get away, which will lead us into the next ability she has, which is her space. So her space ability, as you can see, you kind of jump forward, you get a speed boost, and you go forward a pretty good amount. Now also, this ability will trigger your passive. So right now we're in combat. If I stop shooting, I jump out, I go invisible, and this would also activate your heal over time that you get from your passive. Be careful with this, because if you're spamming buttons and then you double jump, like you'll just instantly cancel it. And even things that aren't like an attack, if you just Q your E to use it and you don't even use it, it will also take you out of stealth. Be intentional when you're using this and make sure you're not canceling it immediately, because then that's where a lot of your self-sustain comes in, is going to be from this passive. Lastly, we have her ultimate, which puts this big cylinder on the ground. As you can see, it provides healing over time. Enemies outside of this won't be able to see inside, so your teammates and their teammates will be invisible inside of that. And then also any enemies that walk into it will be slowed for a percentage. I believe it's 55%. Obviously, the healing of this is good, but also using it to try and disguise ultimates. If, say, you have like a Wanda and she wants to ult, having your ult can make it easier for a Wanda to actually get her ult off without getting blown up out of the sky, or maybe even like a Hela or something like that. So I think right now, most people are just going to use it for the really strong healing over time effect it has. But as we go forward, more coordinated teams, I think you're going to see a lot of play with this setting up ultimates or dives and things like that. And so that's all of her abilities and some kind of tips and general information about them. And overall, I think she's got a good kit. Now moving on to one of my personal favorite strategists, kind of one of my go-tos, is going to be Luna Snow. I don't think you can really ever go wrong with Luna Snow. She's got good damage. She's got really good healing. Her ultimate is basically the best strategist ultimate in the game. The only thing that really kind of hard counters you on that is going to be like an Iron Man ult. Getting into her abilities, we have her left click, which is how she heals and obviously also does damage. It shoots 3 projectiles out. The travel time on this is so fast that it's basically hit scan. Just kind of point and shoot and you'll be good to go. Now before we get to her passive, we're going to talk about her right click and her left shift because those are important for her passive. So her right click is this frozen orb that she throws out that freezes enemies. This is not AoE, so you have to actually hit them directly with it. That's something I see a lot, is that when Lunas are getting dived in the backline, they start to panic and then they just kind of shoot this out thinking maybe it is AoE or not really taking the time to line this up. This is really your number one tool if you're being dived. It's also great to set up picks on enemy tanks and things like that. Now her left shift basically is going to enhance her left click. So your left click now pierces through your allies and hits enemies. So here you can see I'm not hitting the enemy bot, I'm just healing. Unless I've overhealed and there's no healing, then it goes through. With this ability, it doesn't matter. You're always piercing. The thing about this, though, is you don't get crits anymore, so you don't get headshots. So as far as like actually if you're trying to maximize DPS, this isn't the ability you want to use to maximize DPS, but to heal and do DPS at the same time, this is the best thing you can use. Now with those two out of the way, we can talk about our passive. One is obviously, as you can see, once you start holding forward, you get ice skates. This makes her really good for getting back to team fights after she dies, but also, as you can see, we took some damage here, and now we're going to use our right click ability and we start healing. Now the same thing goes if we take damage and we pop our left shift, we start getting some heal over time back. So that's how you're going to stay alive as Luna Snow. So you're going to need to use your left shift and your right click at times to get the healing. Alright, so next we're going to talk about the E. So I'm going to go ahead and place it on this bot here. Now I'm healing the one to his left and he's getting some of that residual healing. It's a good idea to go ahead and throw this on like if you have a Spider-Man or whatever, maybe like a Psylocke or whatever that's going to be diving in the backline. So that way you don't have to try and find them and you can still give them passive heals by even healing your tank while they go and do their thing. Now obviously it's not going to keep them alive all the time, especially if there's not a lot of healing that needs to be done, but this is also good for if you have a tank who is getting 1v6 in the front line. This does provide extra healing to the target, so sometimes you might need to take it off of your Spider-Man or whatever, put it on the tank who's trying to fight the whole enemy team, and you can keep them up for an extremely long amount of time with it. And lastly, let's talk about her ultimate, which is the strongest support ultimate in the game. It did get a change for season 1, but this is still an amazing ultimate. So you go ahead and you put on a show, and as you can see, you can toggle it between doing a heal and you can also do a damage boost. Now before you would spam these, as you can see now, the time to spam between it is much slower. Before you would wrap it, I'm scrolling my wheel as fast as possible. So it's not really optimal to do this anymore. It's keep it on healing. If your team's topped off and they have like 2 people left because your team was about to wipe, then go ahead and swap to the damage mode of it. And you kind of use it as it was intended. But the healing from this ult is insane. This will turn the tide of fights if you're stuck at a choke point. The main thing that's going to counter you is going to be an Iron Man ult that will kill you outright through your ultimate. Most everything else you'll be able to live through. And with that, that's pretty much all of Luna Snow's abilities. She's really good in every situation. There's not really a situation where she's bad at. She can definitely be the main healer. She has enough healing output if you just focus on healing. But her 3-run burst, like as you can see, she also can put out a good amount of damage. So depending on what you need, she can do it all, and her ult is just incredible. So really, She'll probably get banned if you get up into diamond or higher because that ult is so annoying unless you have a coordinated team who can handle it. But pretty much if she pops her ult, the enemy team probably just has to back up because they can't kill anything, or they have to just sit on an Iron Man ult the whole time. So I can't recommend Luna Snow enough, especially if you're just kind of starting out to the role. She's very straightforward. Just use your cooldowns at smart times and just keep holding left click and you'll do just fine on Luna Snow. Okay, next let's talk about everybody's favorite little land shark, Jeff. You've probably seen a lot about this little guy, even if you don't play support, even if you don't play the game. Jeff is kind of infamous in the community. I don't pick him as much because his healing output as an actual strategist is not the best. It's not bad, but it's not the best. A lot of the time when you pick him, it's because you want to use his ult and you want to tilt the enemy team, if we're being completely honest. There's few things as tilting in this game as getting eaten by Jeff and then just suicided off the point, which we'll get to when we talk about his ultimate. Ultimately, in season 1, he did get buffed to his healing, which is nice for him, but they did fix the hitbox of his ult a little bit. So all in all, I think Jeff is fine, but let's go ahead and get into his abilities. Starting with his left click, where he just spits a healing stream. Now, the thing about his left click, it does have unlimited range, so you can actually be pretty good backline healer with this left click. Jeff's right click ability is where he shoots this kind of water ball at enemies. It does AoE on impact, so obviously it does more damage if you direct hit. You can do splash damage as well if you're not directly hitting the enemy. To note, I know I'm not mentioning team ups with everybody, but with Jeff's, I will mention Jeff and Luna's when it pertains to his right click. This right here is very strong. This actually melts people. I'm not gonna lie to you. So don't sleep on this team up, especially since Luna Snow is so popular. If you do play Jeff, take advantage of this insane damage from the team up. Next, we'll talk about his left shift and his passive. His left shift, he goes underground. He has a reduced hitbox. He has increased movement speed. He can be healed in this, and he also gets the ability to wall crawl like this. So you can kind of be annoying crawling on the walls. It's really hard to hit this little fin. And this left shift ability paired with his passive, which is reduces his damage from critical hits. So this actually gives Jeff a pretty good amount of survivability because outside of this, his hitbox, he's so wide. He actually gets kind of blown up pretty easily. And people will definitely be targeting you if you're playing Jeff, so make sure to abuse your left shift and his reduced damage from crits as much as possible. Next, we have his E, which is a healing bubble. So as you can see, you can place these all over the place, and then your teammates can pick them up whenever. Now, whenever they do pick them up, they get healing, and they also get a speed boost. So you can also just shoot them directly at people for like direct healing. You get 6 charges, and then they take time to recharge. These are good to place behind your back line. The E is a pretty basic ability, but has a lot of uses. As long as you're smart with your placement of the E, these can be really strong. The E's are also good to heal yourself, so just throw it out, grab it, go under, and that's how you can get a lot of survivability. And now for the main reason I feel like most people play Jeff is the ultimate. So as you can see, we can confirm, we'll suck up all those bots. They will take damage for a prolonged period of time, and then you can just suicide off the map and kill them. I would say it is best if you can jump yourself off the map. If you're just trying to kill the enemies, that's what you want to do, because sometimes you'll go to spit, and if it's like an Iron Man or something, they just fly up and then you will just get blasted. This does get allies and enemies, and now you can spit out your allies and then you can separately spit out the enemies. Realistically, you're going to see this ult used to grab as many of the enemy team as somebody can and then just suicide with them, which is fine, but this does also have other utility. Since you can also pick up allies, you can get a nasty engage if, say, your team has like all ults. You can go up onto a point with all your team, spit them out, and then you can basically get like a free Wanda ult or other types of ults and get free engage off of that. His ult is very strong. In the season 1 patch notes, they say they reworked his hitbox a bit, so hopefully people aren't getting grabbed outside of the hitbox as bad as they were before. And overall, Jeff, I think, is a pretty good strategist, and using his ult in low elo is definitely going to tilt the enemy team. And also, the most important thing about Jeff is that he is just very adorable. So playing Jeff brings me serotonin in a game that can make me very, very angry, especially playing the strategist role sometimes. Sometimes you got to bust out the Jeff for your own mental well-being. Next up, we have Loki, who was a strategist that actually intimidated me, so I didn't play him for a while, but I think Loki is actually great. He has really good healing. He's got a lot of utility for himself. I like to pick Loki if they're having a backline that's diving a lot, because his invisibility, all his clones, being able to swap with his clones, pretending to be a clone, it can help buy you a lot of time if your team is having a hard time killing the backline divers. So that's one of the main situations I pick Loki. Also picking Loki if your team already has Luna Snow, so you can just copy her ult. Also if the enemy team has a Luna Snow, so that way you guys can have a Luna Snow ult. But let's go ahead and talk about what his just base abilities are, starting with the left click, which is this projectile that does damage, and then it will also, okay, hang on, it also heals. Now, as you can see, the healing actually comes from the AoE, not the direct hit of his ability. So you just kind of have to be in the ballpark and you will heal. Same thing with the damage though. As you can see, the damage is still hitting, so he's actually very forgiving if you don't have great aim, because the main thing you want to be doing is at least just getting close enough. All right, getting into Loki's right click ability, you will go invisible. You'll drop a clone at where you were, and this clone works just like it does if you were to place it with your E, which is how you can place another clone. And so you can have up to 2 clones, and then as you can see, the clones will fire and they will mimic your abilities. That will also lead us into the left shift ability, which is where you put a stone or a rune, whatever it's called, up above you and your clones, and it'll make these healing circles around, and these things heal for a lot, and that's a good way to get some crazy sustained heals on your team on a point or something like that. Now, if your clone dies, the stone will stay. The stone has a separate health bar from the clone. Now, next he has his F, which is he can swap with his clones. There's a lot of potential with Loki if you're smart with how you play with his clones. And I found at a lot of the lower ranks, people have a hard time prioritizing Loki's clones for some reason. The last ability Loki has is his ultimate, which lets you copy another character for 15 seconds. So let's go ahead and take Luna Snow here, for example, which is a great target. So you go ahead and pop your ult, you turn into her, and then you get her ult. And so now I can go with my team and we got a free Luna Snow ult just like that. As you can see, the time's ticking down. After we use the ult, we're still going to have some time as Luna Snow. So right here, we still have 3 seconds. So if we wanted to go for a freeze, we could, and then we're back to playing Loki. His ability, obviously, I'm sure you can imagine, is very strong. So not only do you get the ult, but you also get all the abilities that come with that character. So keep that in mind whenever you are taking an ultimate ability. A lot of the times, though, if you can just take another one of the strategist abilities, like a Mantis, a Luna, or Cloak and Dagger, but also don't be afraid to take a Winter Soldier ult. So playing Loki, it's good to have a basic fundamental understanding of every character in the game, so that way you know whenever you take somebody what they do, and you can maximize that 15 seconds as much as possible. Another thing with Loki passive that, I mean, you're probably not really going to use, but it's just good to know, you get extra damage on backstabs. So you can see the damage difference between a backstab and a non-backstab. It's not crazy substantial, but that is a passive he has. So if you are being a little tricky and you get behind somebody, I mean, you can do a decent amount of damage. Just figured I should mention it. All right, next up we have Mantis, one of my personal favorite healers. I think she is fantastic. When do I pick her? Pretty much all the time. She's very good as a main healer. She's very good as a secondary healer. She's just really good all around. She does good damage, good healing. She has a good ultimate. And also her left shift sleep ability is amazing for stopping backline dive. So to start off, we're going to talk about her left click as usual, but we're also going to talk about the 4 little leaves that you see on the screen here. Those little leaves are your life orb charges. You use those to use like all of your abilities. And so they tie into your left click, because if you get a headshot, it will refund your orb. Actually, hang on. So now I use a life orb, I use a life orb, I use a life orb. Oh no, I've used all my life orbs. Okay. You get a crit, you get it back. She is rewarded for throwing out her left click as much as possible. So you should be putting out damage as Mantis. If you're not putting out an alright amount of damage on Mantis, that means you probably weren't getting your headshots, which means you probably weren't using your abilities as much as you possibly could, which we're going to get into those in a second. But another thing to note is her left click does not have any damage fall off. So this is a very strong ability, and it also feeds into your actual healing capabilities. So Mantis is really fun for that reason. Now, does that mean if you don't have amazing aim, you shouldn't play Mantis? No, not necessarily, but the more headshots you hit, the more you're going to be able to do. Now that we talked about the left click, let's talk about the right click, which is the main way she heals. You expend a life orb to throw a heal over time on somebody. It does give an initial boost of healing, but the thing about the life orb is it does not stack the heal over time effect. So spamming health orbs can help get a target to full health, but only because of the, I think it's 55 healing it gives initially, not because it stacks the heal over time buff. It does refresh the duration though. So as you see, this is low, so we can spam to heal. It is not an efficient use of your resources. So with Mantis, you want to be preemptive. If you know your tank's about to go in, or you see they start to look at your tank, throw one of these early and then go back to damaging, try and throw another one, back to damaging, throw another one. If you find yourself in a situation where you let your ally get this low and you have to like spam your health orbs to get them back up, that's going to put you behind. So you don't want to be very reactionary with Mantis. You want to be very proactive in your healing. Next, real quick, I'm just going to mention her passive, which is when you're at full health, you get extra movement speed. This did get nerfed in the season 1 patch. Also tied to her passive is whenever you're consuming life orbs, you get healing over time. So as you can see, we used our life orb on our ally there, and it heals us as well. Next, I'm going to go and talk about her left shift, which I think is an amazing ability, and it's basically just an AoE sleep. It puts this little clone of Mantis behind them, which the enemy team can shoot to break the target out of the Mantis stun sooner. So as you can see, this does have AoE, but it can't sleep more than one target. So it will just prioritize the target. This is amazing for if you're getting dived by like an Iron Fist or whatever it might be in the back. Just kind of jump back, throw that, put them to sleep, boost yourself, and then try and get the headshot. Which, speaking of boosting yourself, let's go ahead and just get straight into the F ability, which is this, where you give yourself a damage amp. You want to keep this up on yourself as much as possible. This F ability is very good. This also triggers your passive heal over time on yourself, so use this a lot. And we will mention her E, which is where you give a damage amp to your teammates. So you can push E. Now this bot is going to do more damage to the enemy bot. And lastly, we have her ult, which, as you can see, we have a big circle around us. This is going to give a healing over time. And as you can see with our bots, any excessive healing goes to bonus health. And during your ult, unlike Luna Snows, you can move around, you can use abilities, you can go ahead and give damage amps, you can still sleep, you can do everything inside of your ult. Now, you can be killed through this ult. Your teammates can be killed through this ult, but it is very difficult to kill you and your teammates through this ult. It's just not as pretty much invincible as the Luna Snow ult is. And all in all, I think Mantis' kit all just feels really good and flows together very nicely. It's very rewarding to get your headshots and then keep your damage buff and your healing rolling, and then getting up there on the front line, fighting with the team, sleeping people. So she can play either in the back, she can also play up front, pushing with the team, trying to get in there, get active. She's got a small hitbox, so it's hard for people to kind of hit and pin down Mantis. And since you're going to be using your abilities a lot, you have your heal over time from your passive up a lot of the time, so you actually get to be pretty tanky as long as you're not being extremely focused. So I think Mantis is one of the best strategists to climb with, and I think that's kind of illustrated. If you go on the Marvel Rivals website, they have the pick and win rates of all the heroes for season 0, and Mantis came out with a 55% win rate. I think she's going to continue to be good season 1 and beyond. Alright, next up, Rocket Racoon. When would I pick and play him? Honestly, I don't pick and play him quite often, but a good time to pick him is if you have a Punisher or a Winter Soldier on your team, or if you have both, even better, because his team up ability for them is crazy. But let's get into the rest of his kit aside from his team up ability. So his left click is just this Gatling gun that can actually do insane amounts of damage up close. The thing about it though is that it has its damage fall off pretty quickly. We can see here, we're melting this bot at here, still melting this bot. Now we go past the 10 meters, and it goes down quite substantially on how fast we kill things. And then as you can see, we go out to this 20 meters, and the damage fall off is actually just kind of crazy. So if you find yourself up close and brawling with the enemy team a lot, like, this is really strong. Now his right click is how he does most of his healing, which, as you can see, it shoots these like healing orbs that bounce off of things, and then they will slow down once they get near an ally, and they will heal them. So as you can see, watch, we shoot it, it slows down, it heals, and then it keeps bouncing, slows down, and so these keep moving around even after they heal an ally. So he can actually, if you just hold down right click all game and don't do anything else, you can actually get some really good damage numbers just from passive healing. Like, these will fly and heal all over the map. That means you're probably also not doing a lot of damage at the same time. So that's kind of the trade-off with his left and his right clicks. Now his left shift is he gets to dash. Now as you can see, we have 2 dashes, and then it goes on cooldown for about 5 seconds, and you'll get 1 charge, and you'll get another charge. But now let's also talk about his E, which is one of his better abilities, which is this kind of like armor spitting beacon. So as you can see, it's spitting these little armor things out. You pick them up, they give you 25 armor. You can't stack them. So right, like I have one, I can't stack multiple of them. Even though you can't stack the armor, you can throw these down like in spawn before you start the game. So you can throw these down, you can give your team that extra 25 life, and then you can honestly swap off of Rocket if you wanted to. Now, its other ability is that the first teammate who dies, which is going to be this bot right here, will be respawned at the beacon, as you can see here. And then once it does that, it goes away. That initial respawn is actually very strong. That can really help secure first point in domination or get the cart moving in a push defense. You get the idea. Having that extra person stay in the fight after that first initial death, especially say they trade or something like that, can give you the upper hand. So with that in mind, don't throw this in the middle of like the fight, because this does have health. So be strategic when you place this, especially in those first engagements. I think it's very strong. Let's also talk quickly about his passive, which lets him run up walls. So Rocket can have pretty good mobility between his left shift and then his ability to run up walls. He also can hold space to slow fall because of his jetpack. But last but not least, let's go ahead and talk about his ultimate, which is this machine here, which gives you guys a damage amp. Now, as you can see, it doesn't actually heal, but it does give a pretty substantial damage amp, enough so to where a Rocket ult, if you get your whole team to focus after using it, you can burn through a Luna Snow. The only downside to this is a lot like your E, is that it can be destroyed. It has a good amount of health, but that's kind of the downside of most of Rocket's kit, is a lot of his good abilities, like the relay and his ult, they can be destroyed once they're put out. Now, I wouldn't say that he's bad, especially if you have either of these two, like I was saying in the beginning, because giving them this infinite ammo, this actually can't be destroyed. This just stays up for 12 seconds. If they stay in this range, look, he just can infinitely shoot. Same with Winter Soldier. He has more than his 3 bullets. So he can be very powerful. And if you hold right click, he can actually output a crazy amount of healing. So for all that, I wouldn't choose Rocket as like a primary strategist support role. I think he excels really good as a secondary, and as a support, not so much as like your main healer. All right, next on the menu, Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is not somebody I actually play a lot. His playstyle, I don't know, it just doesn't quite fit with me, and we'll kind of get into that as we start talking about some of the abilities and things like that. But I don't think he's bad at all. He does have a res. I think his res is misunderstood, especially at the lower elos, so hopefully I can clear that up for you guys as we talk about it here in a minute. So one reason why I would pick him, or why you might want to pick him, is he does extremely good DPS. He does have good healing. It's just very cooldown dependent, and outside of those cooldowns, you're kind of out of luck. But let's go ahead and talk about his abilities real quick. So his left click just is straight up damage, and it's a pretty good amount of damage, but it doesn't heal allies like a lot of other strategists do. So that one is pretty straightforward. What about his right click? It's basically just a super version of the left click. He charges up, and then as you can see, that's a pretty healthy amount of damage just from the right click. Now, before we get to the rest of the abilities, I want to talk about his passive real quick, which is another very strong thing about him, and that's that he gets a free res every 150 seconds, I believe is the actual time of that. So we're going to go ahead and take lethal damage here. And now we can go ahead and cocoon, and we are back in the fight. So having a free res every couple of fights is pretty massive. So now let's talk about his actual healing abilities, like his E. So to illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and take a few ticks of damage. Let this bot take a few ticks of damage because this does bounce. So we can go ahead and put it on the bot, and as you can see, we get some healing ourselves. Even if we're not aiming at the bot, it'll place the heal on me, and it bounces to the bot. Next up for his healing ability is his left shift. So soul bounded, that means this bot is soul bounded, and then like you can see, that bot up there was also soul bounded. So the more things you have soul bounded, you can basically become invincible because it shares your health pools together. It's like Spirit Link from World of Warcraft. That's probably an obscure reference for a decent amount of people. I don't know. But basically, use it on as many people as possible. It'll share your health pools together, and then you all basically become unkillable for a short period of time. Now, as you could see when I used that ability, it has a massive cooldown. So let's go ahead and use it again. It's kind of like a mini ultimate ability in a way, but then it goes on a 30-second cooldown. So if you pop that and it's an emergency situation and you have to pop both your E's, if things are still going sideways for you, then you're kind of out of luck. Now that brings me to his ultimate, which is a res, and I feel like I really need to explain this one because I see a lot of people treating it like Mercy res from Overwatch, which is not the case. So whenever you push your res, you basically set down a spawn beacon where you placed it. So that bot over there is eventually going to die, right? We can go ahead and set Born Again down here, and then we have a big radius. And you see that big radius hit that bot over there, and now he respawns here, and he respawned with 100 health. So this is where I see a lot of Adam Warlocks not using his ultimate correctly. They will pop this in the middle of the battlefield. So if you res right in front of the enemy team, you have to burn your entire kit to try and heal your team up, when in reality they're probably going to get blown up before you can get everything off. So make sure when you're using his ultimate, you start this away from your team, out of combat. You get 10 whole seconds, as you can see from the timer there, to walk up and then be ready to heal them immediately afterwards. Now, one last thing to kind of talk about with Adam Warlock is that he has a really strong team up ability. So we talked about his passive, how you can come back every now and then from a fight. As you can see, he shares that passive to Mantis and Star-Lord. So this is a very strong team up if you have a good Mantis on your team, and even better if you have a Mantis Star-Lord on your team. Pick Adam Warlock. You have the res. You'll probably win more fights that you should have lost. Okay, last up we have Cloak and Dagger, who actually got buffed into season 1, which I think is crazy because I think they were incredible before. They're definitely in the top 3 as far as strategists go. First, we're going to start off with the left shift because it's important to understand that because it's core to the character, because you're basically playing 2 characters at the same time. You have Dagger, which is more of the actual like strategist healing portion of her kit, and then you have Dagger, which is more damage and assisting your team in doing damage. So every ability that we talk about has a Dagger form and a Cloak form, and we'll go over both as we get to talk about them here. So let's go ahead and start with the left click for both of them. When you're in Dagger form, it is just point and click heals, and it does, as you can see this little ring around, it does heal in an AoE. So if your team is grouped up, you can get insane value out of just your left click. Also, the left click will auto track. So as you can see, I'm not aiming right at them, but you see those 4 little pulsing arrows around the target. That lets me know that these are going to track to my target. So you don't have to be as precise as like Luna Snow. You just have to be in the general area. Now let's go ahead and talk about Cloak's left shift. This is just infinite ammo, hold left click, do damage. That's all it is. And it's got a pretty good range on it too. Which also, before I forget, your right click on Cloak and Dagger does also do damage, and it does also still have the kind of like auto targeting that it does for healing. Okay, next let's go over the right click for Dagger, and this is going to be an AoE dome of healing. Very strong for group healing. If you're kind of getting the idea here, she's very strong at group healing if your team stays together. As far as Cloak goes, he gets one of the most broken abilities in the game if your teammates understand what's going on. So this is better in a coordinated team. You can still make this work really well even in a not coordinated team, but what he does is he goes invisible, and when he does this, you become untargetable, and it also makes your teammates untargetable. So this can negate Jeff ult, this can negate Iron Man ult, this can negate pretty much every ult in the game. The only downside is that if your teammate shoots or does an action in this, it cancels it, and this only lasts for 2 seconds. So you have to pick your windows very carefully. This is extremely broken, and even if your team isn't utilizing it to its effect because they just keep shooting and they're not mindful of your using it, it will save you, right? Because you get that full 2 seconds. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the E for both characters. So for Dagger, she's going to shoot out this light wall. Let me wait for that to respawn. And you see they get this green border around. That means they're going to take increased healing. So this is where if we put it all together, we can do stupid healing as Dagger, right? We're going to throw the E, we throw the right click, and then we just left click spam. That is an incredible amount of healing for your team. Now when it comes to the Cloak version, this is also a wall like Dagger's E, but it does damage. It also applies a vulnerability to the target, and it blinds them. So you should start kind of be getting the idea that you want to be shifting in and out of these forms pretty frequently because they don't share cooldowns, right? Now don't get so wrapped up in thinking that you have to be constantly swapping and constantly doing damage. Can Cloak and Dagger do amazing damage? Yes. But if your team is dying at the cost of you trying to maximize damage, then just stay in dagger form. You can just purely stay in dagger form and do fantastic healing. If you have the opportunity, because your team is good enough and they're not dying constantly, start mixing in your cloak abilities, but definitely don't sleep on using this at any point to negate big ultimates. Next, let's talk about her ultimate, where she dashes forward and she's going to leave a trail on the ground, as you can see, and you get 4 dashes of this now. And as you can see, this does damage on the ground it leaves, but it also provides healing to your teammates. This obviously has a lot of use cases on domination points, but also on pushing the cart objectives. Pushing this, getting up to the cart, going past the cart, doing a line for the enemy backline, and then coming back to let your team be able to walk up onto the point and even push past it, and the enemy will have to back up because they don't want to be involved. Now, another thing about the ultimate is that these shadows do stack. So if I go this way and I go that way, that bot is getting extra healing because it double stacks the shadow on the ground. And vice versa, that one is taking more damage because of the double stacked. Realistically, you don't want to stack more than 2 lines. And with season 1, they buffed her change speed between Cloak and Dagger, and they gave her an extra dash of her ultimate, now having 4. So Cloak and Dagger was already very strong before, and now she's even stronger. I would highly recommend, if you just want to pick one person in main, she's fantastic for that. She can do it all. She can do damage. She can do healing. She can help secure the objectives. Okay, and there we have it. That is all 8 strategists. Thank you for watching. If you jumped around, hopefully you found some information for whoever you're trying to main. Feel free to come back to this video so you don't have to go find multiple videos. I wanted to keep everything in one spot. This turned out to be quite bigger than I thought it was going to be, but I mean, that's fine. I don't see myself doing this type with everybody all at once for like a DPS thing. If I do decide to do another guide video, we'll see. I mean, if anybody even watches this one, maybe breaking down the DPS to like backline divers specifically, so that way it's not like a 2-hour long video. I am currently experimenting with tank. I probably could do a tank video similar to how I did this one, do it all in one, so that way it's not all broken up. But I think I want to play a few more tank games, get a little more acquainted with a few of them before I decide to take something like that on. Let me know if you would even care to see something like that. Again, I don't know how many people are going to see this. I've just been really enjoying the game lately, and I figured I should make a video because I've been saying I'm going to make YouTube videos for like ever. So here's this one. I don't know if I'm going to be making a ton of Rivals content. I mean, if this blows up, maybe. If nobody ever sees this, who knows? I'll make something else. I'm just kind of rambling now because this is the end of the video. Again, thank you. Like, subscribe if you want to. Leave feedback down below. What helped, what didn't help, what editing choices you liked, didn't like, and I think that's about it. Time to go edit forever. Yay!